If you're looking to buy a stacked NBA 2K account with max badges and more, visit sportstmb.com. He has been in the community for years and has hundreds of reviews. Click the first link in the description to get your account today.
The Toronto Raptors are off to a fantastic start. Seen as a 5th to 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, so far this year they are 2nd in the East with a 15-4 record. They are 3rd in defensive rating and 7th in offensive rating. And that has come from a decently easy schedule. However, they have beaten the Lakers and the Sixers. Beating the Lakers is not an easy feat, though I do think they are an overrated team. As I said in the last video, the Raptors gave them one of their 3 losses, and they did so with their defense and with some guys towards the end of the rotation like Chris Boucher and Terrence Davis stepping up. Guys like Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet have stepped up a lot, filling in some of the scoring that is missed with Kawhi leaving. OG Anunoby has been fantastic. He didn't get much of a chance to play last year because he got injured, but this year he's shown some signs of being more than just a role player type of dude. I still don't quite buy it, but he has been very good. And then of course there are the role players like Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka. Norman Powell has been good, but of course, last but not least, there is the guy at the top of all of this, Pascal Siakam, who in the absence of Kawhi has stepped up to look like not only a star, but potentially even a superstar. And that's the main reason that I feel that this Bucks team could be a legitimate threat in the Eastern Conference, whether that means just giving the Milwaukee Bucks some problems or even making their way to the finals, who knows, but I definitely think this is a team that needs to be talked about. Before we talk about this team, we need to dive into some numbers, but before we start with that, I want to preface this with something. As I've done these team review-ish videos, I guess you should call them, I've opened those videos with me saying, let's dive into the numbers, and people seem to be taking that as me not watching the games, even though I give evidence of me watching the games in the videos by pointing those things out. As soon as you mention stats, people are happy to shout, oh, you don't watch the game clearly if you're talking about stats. Stats are just evidence for what you're seeing with your eyes on the court. I don't watch all of the games, but trust me, I watch a lot of them. I know about that one stream website that we all know about. You know the one. I'm not going to say it because I'm not a snitch, but you know about the one. Stats are a way to back up what you've seen on the basketball court, not a substitute. No more and no less. I understand the impulse to attack people who only use stats and don't even watch games, but I love basketball too much to not watch games, so I'm not one of those guys. Like, seriously, do you think I made an entire channel that I upload on nearly daily now about a subject that I don't care about? That would be pretty stupid. Anyways, diving into the numbers. The one guy that I have been really pleasantly surprised by is Kyle Lowry. I'm not surprised the guy has stepped up, but I wasn't expecting it to be at quite the level that he is. He's putting up 22 points and 6.5 assists on fantastic shooting splits. Kyle hasn't averaged 20 plus in 2 years, and I was expecting like 16 to 17 a game from the guy, but nah, I guess he decided it was time to start scoring again. It's something he's always been able to do, but he hasn't been as aggressive over the last 2 seasons, but with Kawhi now gone, he had to step up. Then there is Fred VanVleet, who I am less surprised by than most people pretty significantly. A guy with Fred VanVleet's level of ball handling and 3-point shooting can be an 18-point scorer in the modern NBA, especially when his team needs him to be. It's also worth mentioning that he is only 25 years old, and it's the first year where he's been given the full green light. He's averaged 18.6 a game. Now I will say that I am surprised by his passing. Dude's leading the team in assists with 7.5 a game. He really didn't display that level of playmaking potential in the first 3 years of his career. He was good, but not 7.5 assists per game good. So it looks like he either improved his vision or just made more of a conscious effort to be a passer, kind of like Kawhi has this year. His field goal percentage is not great, but you have to consider the context of his size as well as his play style. The guy shoots almost as many threes as he does 2-pointers, and when you look at his true shooting percentage, he is shooting a career high 57%. Using Using that metric, if you think he's inefficient, then you also think that Kyrie Irving, Damian Lillard, and Kemba Walker are inefficient. True shooting percentage really should be a more well-known and more often used in debate stats because it gives context to the type of player that is shooting the ball. Kyle Korver is not expected to have the same field goal percentage as Clint Capella. Anyways, next up is Norman Powell. When he came into the league, he looked like he was going to be a great role player, and then he kind of sucked for a bit, and I was afraid that he was going to be the next KJ McDaniels, but instead he has turned it around, was good for them in the playoffs last year, and this year he's shooting 37% from 3 on 5 attempts a game, grabbing rebounds, and getting 13 points per game. Playing defense, finishing on the break, you know, Norman Powell shit. And then with OG Anunoby, this is an example of why it's important to watch games because I don't think Raptors fans should be freaking out about this guy's jump shot this much. He is shooting 37% from 3 on 4 attempts, which is obviously phenomenal, but when you watch him play, the shot still does not look very natural to OG. It's still very mechanical. I think OG can be a good shooter, just not a great one. And this awkwardness to his jumper probably also stems from a lack of confidence. It's why I don't think OG has star potential. I think he can be like a 15 point per game version of Jeremy Grant with a good jump shot. That's a damn good player, probably top 50 to even top 40, just not quite a star. Other than that, there aren't too many important developments with this team outside of Pascal, who we're going to talk about in a second. Serge Ibaka is doing Serge Ibaka things. Marc Gasol is still 56 years old. The less important guys they signed have been about as good as expected. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson is getting 10 and 6. This Chris guy has been pretty good, and Terrence Davis, who I believe is an undrafted rookie, is shooting really well from 3. He might not be undrafted, but I really don't care enough to look it up. But other than that, Pascal Siakam has undoubtedly been the main reason for Toronto's success. He's averaging 26 points per game, 8.5 rebounds, 4 assists, and he is shooting 39% from 3 on 6.5 attempts per game. And a lot of those threes have come off of the dribble with a defender in his face, things like that. Pascal has truly flipped the script on his shooting ability. Capable as a wide open 3-point shooter to pulling up in guys' faces is a pretty drastic change while still improving the percentage while doubling the attempts. Over just one offseason, might I add. That 3-point shot has not only made offense easier for him, but it's also opened up the floor for Vanvleet and Lowry. No longer are teams going to dare Siakam to shoot. They ain't leaving him open to double Fred or Kyle anymore. He's also been great on defense as he's always been, but in this new offensive role, it's an encouraging sign that he hasn't tried any less on that end of the floor. That's a sign that you really have a guy who cares about all the little things, and that's going to get you wins. This team has also played really well as a unit on both ends of the court. Kyle and Vanvleet make for some dynamic guard scoring and playmaking, as well as some defense. Kyle is old and short, but he is still good defensively. Vanvleet is short, but he's also still a really good defender, and he's pretty well built. And then Pascal is great defensively. OG hangs his hat on that end of the court, and both Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka are defensive-minded centers. This has made them a top 3 defense in the NBA, and with Lowry and Freddie stepping up with Pascal, it's made for a damn good offense as well. The only concern that I really have for this Raptors team is there would always be a handful of stretches on offense where the offense looked pretty iffy. I think there's still some awkwardness for this team offensively post Kawhi, but I also don't think it's a huge deal and it shouldn't be a problem down the line, just an observation. Now, as for the question of this video, are the Toronto Raptors contenders? Well, yes and no. I have 2 categories for contenders. There are real contenders, like it would make a lot of sense to bet a lot of money on them winning a championship, teams like the Clippers, Lakers, and Bucks. Then there are teams like the Raptors who are not on that level, but under the right circumstances, if they could really pull everything together, it is semi-realistic at least for them to win a championship. A team like that is the Rockets, Nuggets, Jazz, Mavs, Celtics, and Heat. I would put the Raptors in that boat, and that being said, they're not at the bottom of those teams that I mentioned. I think they're better than the Heat and Celtics, potentially even the Nuggets if the offense continues to struggle. Same thing for the Jazz for the same reason. And I said this in my Jazz video, so I'll say it here as well. I'm always more confident betting on a team that hangs their hat on the defensive end. rather than offense. Because offense can be inconsistent. Sometimes you have a game where you go over 27 from 3, and that is enough to cost you a series. Rarely is there an equivalent to that 0 for 27 night for the defensive end of the court. So you can expect this Raptors team to perform how they're supposed to in the playoffs. Whether or not that is good enough to be a really good team or not, we do not know yet, but you can't expect this Raptors team to lose composure, especially with most of this Raptors team having just won a championship. My one concern for this team is their perimeter scoring, at least come playoff time. Having a guy like Kawhi Leonard who is just ridiculous at creating his own shot really opens up the offense. And I don't think that Lowry or Freddie are quite on that level, and that inability could be what holds them back from winning a championship. But luckily, I do think there is enough to get out of the Eastern Conference, because the Bucks and Sixers also have that problem. The Heat and Celtics don't, but they don't have a roster on the level of the Bucks and Sixers. Plus, Pascal would kill the Celtics inside. And then for the Milwaukee Bucks, who are the biggest threat in the Eastern Conference, the Raptors have developed a defensive game plan to at least somewhat contain Giannis, and there's no reason that game plan can't work without Kawhi Leonard. So I could see their defense getting them past the Bucks. But that's the Raptors. What do you think the ceiling for this team is? Sorry for the video coming out late. I had to move around my mattress and replace the frame and build one and tear another one apart. It took like 3 hours. So yeah, that's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.